I want to start today with something that genuinely keeps me up at night. The Social Security Administration, the agency responsible for distributing billions of dollars in benefits every single year, operates on a system that most Americans don't fully understand. And that misunderstanding is costing real people real money, not thousands of dollars, not tens of thousands. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars over a lifetime that people who fully qualify for are simply never receiving, not because they were denied, not because the government took it away, but because nobody told them it existed, because they never knew to ask, because the SSA doesn't call you when money is sitting there with your name on it. They wait, and if you never ask, they never pay. Today I'm going through 5 specific Social Security benefits that are written directly into federal law. Benefits that real people, people exactly like you or someone you love, are entitled to right now, this month, and that go unclaimed every single month because most Americans have simply never heard of them. I'm going to tell you who qualifies, what the dollar amounts actually look like, and exactly what steps you need to take to claim each one. And I need you to stay until the very end, because the last benefit I cover is the one that shocks people the most, every single time. It involves a little-known legal option that the SSA will almost never bring up on their own, and missing it could cost you 6 figures over your lifetime. Before we get into it, I need you to do one thing right now. Subscribe to this channel and turn on the notification bell. I cover exactly this kind of information. Benefits that exist, that you're fully entitled to, that nobody proactively tells you about. The people who are subscribed here find out about these things before the window closes. The ones who aren't tend to find out too late or never. Hit subscribe right now and let's get into it. Benefit number 1, the spousal benefit. I want to start here because the dollar amounts involved are significant, and the number of people leaving this money on the table is staggering. Here's the core of it. If your spouse receives Social Security retirement benefits, you may be entitled to a benefit of your own worth up to 50% of their monthly check, even if you never worked a day in your life or worked very little, or spent decades out of the workforce raising children instead of building up your own earnings record. Think about what that actually means in real numbers. If your spouse is receiving $2,400 a month in Social Security retirement benefits, you could be entitled to $1,200 on top of that every single month for the rest of your life. That's $14,400 a year. Over 10 years, that's $144,000. And it's sitting there right now, uncollected, by millions of Americans who simply assumed they didn't qualify. The reason so many people miss this benefit is a deeply held misconception. They assume that because they didn't work enough years to earn a significant Social Security benefit on their own record, they're simply out of luck. That's not how this works. The spousal benefit exists specifically for this situation. It was designed precisely for the spouse who stayed home, who worked part-time, whose own Social Security record doesn't add up to much on its own. The system accounts for that, but it only pays out if you apply. Here's how the SSA actually handles it. When you apply, they look at what you would receive on your own work record. Then they look at 50% of your spouse's benefit. They pay you whichever number is higher. So if your own benefit would be $400 a month, but 50% of your spouse's benefit is $1,100, you receive $1,100. The difference between those two numbers, $700 a month, is money that's legally yours and that disappears permanently if you never apply for it. What are the requirements? Your spouse must already be collecting their own Social Security retirement benefit. You must be at least 62 years old to begin claiming, although claiming at 62 does reduce the benefit. If you wait until your own full retirement age, which is 67 for anyone born in 1960 or later, you receive the full 50%. Claiming at 62 brings that figure down to 32.5%. That's still meaningful money, and depending on your health and financial situation, claiming earlier might absolutely be the right call, but you need to know the difference so you can make that decision intentionally. You apply online at ssa.gov by calling 1-800-772-1213 or by visiting your local Social Security office in person. Don't assume someone else has done this on your behalf. Don't assume SSA will bring it up when your spouse files. This is a separate application, and it only happens if you initiate it. Benefit number 2, the divorced spouse benefit. Of all the benefits I cover today, this one has the single largest awareness gap. A survey conducted in 2025 found that 50% of Americans, half the country, incorrectly believe that divorced people cannot receive benefits based on a former spouse's earnings record. Half. That is an enormous misconception with real financial consequences for millions of people, and I want to dismantle it completely right now. Here is the truth. If you were married for at least 10 years and you have not remarried, you may be entitled to up to 50% of your ex-spouse's Social Security benefit. Your ex-spouse will never be notified. Their benefit will not be reduced by a single dollar. It doesn't matter if they have since remarried. It doesn't matter if they have a new spouse who is also receiving spousal benefits based on their record. Multiple people can draw benefits from the same earnings record simultaneously without any of them losing a cent. The government doesn't take from one person to pay another in this situation. This is simply a benefit you're entitled to under the law. Let me walk you through the requirements clearly. The marriage must have lasted at least 10 years, measured from your wedding date to the date the divorce was legally finalized, not 9 years and 11 months, 10 full years. You must currently be unmarried. If you've remarried, this benefit goes away, though it can come back under certain circumstances if that subsequent marriage also ends. You must be at least 62 years old, and your own Social Security benefit, based on your own work record, must be smaller than what you would receive on your ex-spouse's record. There's an additional provision that many people don't know about. If your ex-spouse hasn't yet claimed their own Social Security benefits, you can still apply for divorced spouse benefits as long as you've been divorced for at least 2 years, you're both at least 62 years old, and you meet the other requirements. You don't have to wait for them to file first. This benefit most often affects women, though it absolutely applies to men as well, who spent years out of the paid workforce during a marriage that eventually ended. Those years of lost earnings show up as gaps or zeros in their own Social Security record. Years of raising children, managing a household, supporting a spouse's career, none of that shows up in the SSA's wage database, but the 10-year rule exists specifically to protect people in that situation. It says, your contribution to that marriage mattered, and you are entitled to a share of the Social Security benefit that was built during those years. You apply independently. You don't need your ex's cooperation, their Social Security number is helpful but not always required, and you do not need their permission or involvement in any way. Apply at ssa.gov or call 1-800-772-1213. If you were married for 10 years or more and you're not currently remarried, this benefit is worth looking into this week, not next month, this week. Benefit number 3, the widow and widower survivor benefit, and the strategy SSA almost never tells you about. The basic survivor benefit is something most people have at least heard of. If your spouse has passed away, you may be entitled to receive up to 100% of the Social Security benefit they were receiving or would have received at their full retirement age. That's a significant benefit on its own, and if you're a widow or widower who hasn't yet claimed it, that conversation with SSA needs to happen soon. But what most people, including most SSA representatives, don't explain is the claiming strategy that sits on top of this benefit. The SSA's own Inspector General conducted a study and found that thousands of widows and widowers were never told about a specific approach to claiming these benefits, and the cost of that silence was an average of $21,200 per person. That's not a rounding error. That's the government's own watchdog documenting a real, measurable failure to inform people about money they were entitled to. Here's how the strategy works, and I want to walk through it carefully because the math matters. A widow or widower can begin collecting survivor benefits as early as age 60, receiving a reduced amount, roughly 71.5% of the full benefit. At that same moment, their own personal Social Security retirement benefit is sitting completely untouched, and here's the important part, it's growing. Every year, you delay your own retirement benefit past your full retirement age. It earns what are called delayed retirement credits, increasing by approximately 8% per year until you hit 70. So the strategy is this. You start collecting the survivor benefit at 60. Your own retirement benefit continues growing untouched in the background. At 70, when your own retirement benefit has reached its maximum possible value, you switch. You stop collecting the survivor benefit and begin collecting your own now significantly larger retirement benefit instead. You get the income from 60 to 70, and then you get the higher check for the rest of your life. Let me put real numbers on this so you can see exactly what's at stake. One analysis followed a widow whose survivor benefit at age 60 was approximately $2,288 a month. Her own retirement benefit, if she waited until 70, would grow to approximately $2,976 a month. By taking the survivor benefit from age 60 to 69, and then switching to her own benefit at 70, she collected over $274,000 in cumulative payments during those years without sacrificing the larger monthly check she'd receive for the rest of her life. Compared to the alternative, skipping the survivor benefit entirely and just waiting until 70. The switching strategy added roughly $250,000 in total lifetime income. $250,000 from knowing to ask about one strategy. This SA does not walk you through this when you call. They don't sit down with you and model out the two scenarios and show you the difference. You have to know to ask. If you are a widow or widower who has not yet claimed any Social Security benefits, call SSA and specifically ask about the option of claiming survivor benefits first while delaying your own retirement benefit. Ask them to explain both paths. Ask for the numbers in writing. This conversation is worth having this week. the retroactive lump sum payment. This one surprises people every single time I bring it up, and I've been covering Social Security topics long enough to know exactly how the reaction goes. The idea that SSA will write you a check for months of benefits you didn't even collect yet feels too good to be true. It is completely true. Here's the situation. If you have already reached your full retirement age, which is 67 for anyone born in 1960 or later, but you haven't yet filed for Social Security, you are sitting on a lump sum payment right now that most people never know to request. When you apply for Social Security benefits after your full retirement age, you can ask SSA to pay you retroactively, meaning they pay you as if you had applied up to 6 months earlier than your actual application date. If your monthly benefit is $2,000, 6 months of retroactive payments arrives as a $12,000 check with your first payment. If your monthly benefit is $3,000, that retroactive payment is $18,000. For a $2,500 benefit, you're looking at a $15,000 payment for simply knowing this option exists and asking for it by name. Now, there is a trade-off, and I want to be completely transparent about it because knowing the trade-off is what lets you make the right decision for your situation. When you take the retroactive lump sum, your ongoing monthly benefit is calculated based on that earlier start date. So your monthly checks going forward will be slightly lower than they would have been if you had applied fresh without the retroactive request. Whether the lump sum is worth that reduction depends entirely on your specific numbers, your health situation, your immediate financial needs, and how long you expect to collect benefits. But here's what I need you to hear clearly. The option exists. It is perfectly legal. It is built directly into how SSA processes applications, and SSA will not offer it to you. They will not bring it up when you call. They will not mention it when you sit down at your local office. You have to walk in knowing to ask for the retroactive payment option. When you apply, tell them you want to discuss retroactive payments and ask them to run the numbers for both scenarios so you can compare them side by side before you decide. Benefit number 5, the Social Security do-over. And here we are. Benefit number 5, the one that people find hardest to believe, is real. The one I get the most messages about after people go verify it themselves and come back genuinely stunned that it exists. The Social Security do-over. Here's the situation it applies to. Someone claims Social Security early, let's say at 62, because they needed the money, or because they thought it made sense at the time, or because nobody explained what they were giving up. They've been receiving a reduced monthly benefit ever since, and now they've done the math, or talked to someone, or watched something like this, and they realize that claiming early was a significant financial mistake that is going to cost them for the rest of their life. If it has been less than 12 months since that person first applied for Social Security, they have the legal right to withdraw their application entirely using a form called SSA 521. They repay every dollar they've received so far, every monthly payment, any Medicare premiums deducted, everything. And in exchange, the SSA wipes the slate completely clean. It's treated as though they never applied. The clock resets. They can then wait until a later age and refile, receiving a significantly higher monthly benefit for the rest of their life. How much higher? The difference between claiming Social Security at 62 versus waiting until 70 is up to 77% more per month. Let that sink in. On a benefit of $1,500 at 62, that same earnings record pays out around $2,655 a month at 70, every month, for life. If someone lives to 85, we're talking about a difference of hundreds of thousands of dollars in total income over their lifetime. The math is unambiguous, and the only thing standing between someone in that situation and that outcome is whether they know this option exists and whether they act within the 12-month window. That window is strict. After 12 months from your original application date, the full withdrawal option disappears. There is a related option for people who are past their full retirement age called voluntary suspension, where you stop receiving benefits temporarily, earn delayed retirement credits during the pause, and then restart at a higher monthly amount later. Voluntary suspension doesn't require repayment the way a full withdrawal does, but it applies to a different situation and has different rules. Neither of these options will be offered to you unprompted. Form SSA-521 is available right now at ssa.gov. So here's where we are. 5 benefits that are yours by law. The spousal benefit worth up to 50% of your partner's monthly check. The divorced spouse benefit for anyone who was married 10 or more years and hasn't remarried. The widow and widower survivor benefit with a switching strategy that a government watchdog confirmed is costing people an average of $21,200 in unclaimed income. The retroactive lump sum for anyone past full retirement age who hasn't yet claimed. And the 12-month do-over option using Form SSA 521 that can reset a costly early claiming decision before it defines the rest of your financial life. Every single one of these requires you to apply. Not one of them gets paid automatically. The SSA is not going to call you. They are not going to send a letter explaining your options. They are not going to sit across from you and walk through every scenario that could benefit you. That is the only reason millions of people who fully qualify are receiving nothing. They simply didn't know to ask. If something in this video applies to you or to someone you love, share it right now. Don't wait. Don't think about it. Hit the share button and send it to the person who needs to see this today. And if you're not subscribed yet, do it now. This is exactly the kind of information I cover. The stuff that exists in plain sight that nobody proactively tells you about. The people watching this channel are the ones who find out in time. Subscribe, share this video, and I'll see you in the next one.